do this event for a reason, but never underestimate the connections you're going to make with other people. Just like Teresa and I met at a conference very similar to this. We had a meal because of Megan. Hello, Megan. Welcome to the space. Yes.
The power of meeting people is me. It's not the liquor.
And then Megan, and then now she gets to lead. Like she comes in to say that, and then she just doing exits.
I did say your name, Megan.
Oh,
so
you
you
did?
can tell her that.
Okay.
I
Oh,
did
awesome.
bring you up. Yeah.
So anyway, it's just incredible just to see how the Lord uses these connections and sisterhood and humanity, because of course we have our brothers in the crew as well. So educated women empower women. Empowered women start movements, right? Totally. We have to know though. We have to know how cool we are. We need to know how cool our hormones are in this case. So Teresa and I are going to walk you through very quickly how cool the cycle is. Each of you should have a postcard in your bag. If you do not have a postcard in your bag, take one of these and pass it. Oopsie, I'll have someone for me. If someone could just, thank you so much. All right. So the good news is that while we don't have much time left, we had too much fun at the beginning, but it was well worth it, I'd say. We learned and we had fun and we won prizes, which is great. But this postcard is something that you can keep in reference for later. So Teresa and I are going to walk through the cycle. We are going to prove to you how cool our hormones are, because the opposite of fear is empowered, right? And this is the Fearless Future Conference. So how can we be empowered if we don't know how cool we are? You know? Or as my 9-year-old son would say, bussin'. Like hormones are bussin'.
Or they're bro.
They're bro.
Yeah, bro.
Bussin', they're bro.
Not
Hormones
meh.
are bussin',
Not
bro.
meh.
Meh. So anyway, so take a look at this, at your postcard. We're going to start at the very beginning of the cycle. Teresa, do you want to do the first half and I'll do the second half?
Sure. Sure, sounds good. And I always like, if I'm going to educate a patient in the office, a lot of times I'll say, can you tell me when your main event of your cycle is? And do you know what your main event of your cycle is? And many times they know the answer. A lot of our young women actually are better educated than we were. And some of them will know what I'm talking about, and a lot of them won't. So the main event of your cycle is not your period. And I think that's the first kind of paradigm shift we need women to have, is that, the period is kind of the end of the story. Think of a sentence. Where does the period go? It goes at the end. And it's actually a failure of the main event. The whole point of the main event is that the hope that this egg gets released from our body will be fertilized. And if that doesn't happen, then there's an end. Okay, so we start at the beginning. We actually kind of do it backwards, and we put the period at the beginning, right? So the start of a menstrual cycle, day 1 is the start of your flow. That was just the end of the last event, and it's shedding off so that your body can get that egg ready. Now, it's important to remember this. At the end of a period, which we know is about 5 days, and it is a crescendo, decrescendo flow, is that's a very important feedback place, right? Because remember I told you that the brain is the place where everything is basically a loop system, a feedback loop system. So at the very end of the period, your hormones are at their very lowest. In fact, your estrogen is at its very lowest. What does that do? It triggers something in your brain called follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH. What does FSH do? It is going to bring us to the main event. Okay, so that hormone released from the pituitary is incredibly important. And if you think of a drug like Clomid or Letrozole, those drugs do the same thing. They draw down estrogen through a pathway, and then that brings up FSH. So if you never understood why those drugs work, that is why. And so as you enter into the FSH place, then what does that do? With the selecting of a follicle from your ovary, all of a sudden that follicle says, well, the follicle doesn't say it. I don't know how this all happens, but one of them gets chosen, like God does. One of them is like, I get to be the one. I get to be the one, right? And so all of a sudden that follicle starts to grow on the ovary. It becomes the dominant follicle. And that will produce a hormone called estrogen.